All right, so joining me today, a couple of people that I actually knew nothing about. I had to unfortunately admit that to them before, but upon being introduced, I've discovered they have a very impressive YouTube channel, some very impressive following that on Instagram as well, and they're currently hanging out here in New Zealand. Syd and Macky, welcome to the OTB podcast.
Thanks for having us. Excited
Glad to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. So you've just been out, you've just finished the Volcanic Epic in Rotorua, right?
Yes, yesterday.
Yep.
Nice. How are you feeling? I mean, you've had quite an adventure leading up to it as well, so I'm sure it hasn't really been a slow taper into the event.
Yeah, it was really hard to taper for a stage race here in New Zealand because the riding was just too good everywhere we were. So we definitely had to pull on the reins a little bit the week before the race and sit around in Rotorua and not ride, which was really hard.
That's a challenge.
But I think, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good today. Good for the day after a 5-day stage race.
We did go ride in the Waka Forest for almost 3 hours today because we were like, this is our last day. We have to get just a little bit more. It was very slow.
Yeah,
but we did.
But we're gonna sit on a plane for a long time tomorrow. So
yeah.
I think you call that one active recovery, right? You know, like
Exactly.
But active recovery after it.
Yeah.
So something I thought I'd wait until I told you when we were on here, and unfortunately didn't quite get connected with you guys early enough, but I actually live in Nelson, which was your first destination on this trip.
Oh man, if only we realized.
I know. So I started watching some of your YouTube vlogs, and I'm watching the one when you're in Nelson, and I'm like, damn, like this is obviously after you've left, and I'm like, man, and so I'm kind of watching, and you guys are setting your bikes up and everything, and you roll out to go for, I think it was your ride on your second day. And as you're riding out the driveway of the Airbnb you're staying at, I'm looking at it going, that is so familiar. Turns out you were staying maybe about 500 meters, 600 meters from my house, and you were literally staying across the road from my kids' kindergarten, which I go to every morning. So like we were within a stone's throw of each other the whole time you were here, which is crazy.
That's really funny.
We probably like rode by you at some point while you were like dropping or picking up your kid.
Yeah, we were the only people in Nelson wearing spandex, so you probably would have noticed.
Yeah, there's very few of us, so I usually keep it for select occasions, either when I'm on the road or when I'm into full XC training side of my very varied riding that goes on. But yeah, so you definitely would have stood out a bit. But yeah, that was hilarious. As I realized, I saw the house straight across the street from where you're staying, and I'm like, that looks too familiar. And then it clicked, and I was like, no way, they were literally staying just around the corner from me. So, but how was Nelson? Was that your first trip here?
It was our first time in Nelson. Well, technically, we did ride in Nelson in 2014 when we were here, but we didn't really remember because we were kind of doing the drive around in a car, and we stopped and rode the Coppermine Trail. That was 11 years ago. So but since then we just heard a ton about Nelson. So we're like, if we're gonna split our trip and do a South Island, North Island thing, like let's go somewhere we haven't really spent time before. And we loved it. It was amazing.
We went and rode the Coppermine again, and it went a lot better this time. Because like at the time, we just didn't.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I mean, we were racing enduro, so we didn't really have the fitness, and like especially Syd was fairly new
and stuff. So
to like, and it just, I remember it being a very long ride and not feeling especially easy. And then we went and did it this time, and we were like, wow, that was a nice little ride.
Yeah, we definitely like pulled the Uno reverse because last time we were in Nelson, we were on like huge bikes and weren't fit, and this time we had cross-country bikes and a lot of fitness, and then went and rode a lot of really steep, sketchy stuff on not the right bikes, but we still had fun.
I watched your first day, like your first big ride you did, and I'm sitting there watching it going like, they took XC bikes there? Like, holy shit, like you may have been some of the first people down those trails in years on a like 120mm travel bike.
Yes.
Honestly, like the travel was fine. The XC tires were really a liability.
Yeah, that was the limiting.
There were like a few things I rode that I don't know if I would have ridden them like had I been able to stop in time.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, so we just like kept going.
Yeah. So, I mean, for anyone local or anyone that's ridden Nelson before, you guys went up and you rode, I believe you rode Butters first, Tarakoa,
Yeah.
back up the Fringe. So you rode up Fringe Hill, which is a decent climb in itself, down Tarakoa, which is quite fun on a short travel bike. I ride that a lot on the XC bike. And then you turned around and went up the Fringe Classic, which is the worst climb in Nelson and one of the worst climbs I've ridden anywhere. I know, Syd, you were mentioning in the video, you're like, this isn't doing justice to how steep it is. It's a horrible climb.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is we had ran into a guy the day before who had, I thought that was what he recommended. He has since commented on our video and be like, I can't believe you guys did all that in the same day. That was not what I was suggesting at all. But so I just routed it on Trail Forks and was like, oh, look, we can go up a different way. And we're like going up this going, I don't think this is what this guy had in mind. I think he would have mentioned there was like 20% grade for like an hour.
Yeah. On a really good day, that climb is like 45 minutes if you're really punching it, and that is just it's just relentless of just brutal. And then like it not only stays steep, it also gets really loose and water rutted as well once you get kind of up towards the top. So that was impressive. And then you went through Black Diamond Ridge and down Peking Ridge, I think you rode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's another iconic Nelson trail, but it's great effort on those bikes again down that trail.
Yeah, we definitely were like, we have to come back to Nelson with the enduro bikes one day. But since we were coming for Volcanic Epic, Macky did float it. He was like, let's bring like all the bikes. Yeah. But I'm glad we didn't. I mean, the airport situation alone would have just been a nightmare. But
logistically it would have been hard, but man, it would have been nice to have the big travel bikes there.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have done your research, but I mean, you've got other things like the Gorge, which is an amazing spot for the big travel bikes. You definitely wouldn't want to take the bikes you're on out there, and Cable Bay as well. Like there's so much good riding in Nelson. It's actually really cool to see you guys come out from the US and go, hey, we're going to specifically go to Nelson in the South Island, because most people come and they go Queenstown. That's the spot. We're going to Queenstown. So that was super cool.
We really enjoyed it, and we will definitely be back.
Yeah, and I didn't really get bored of the Fringed Hill stuff at all. Like we kept seeing people that were like, go to Cable Bay and like go over here, and I'm like, well, this is still awesome.
Yeah, we're still having fun over here, and we've been here for like 2 weeks. So I
guess we'll have to come back.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I get that a lot, and I mean, obviously, I live right by where you were staying, so you'd understand it. But like when there's so many good trails that takes me not even 15 minutes to ride from my door to, it's hard to go elsewhere when you can just ride there.
Totally.
It was cool. So you guys, did you fly back up to Rotorua afterwards? You didn't do like a road trip or anything?
We didn't. So we actually spent a good bit of time in New Zealand in 2014 and 15, and mostly in Queenstown and Rotorua. And so we did the ferry thing a few times there. The final time we did the ferry was during like a cyclone, and it was a terrible experience. So I was like, let's not do that this time.
We had bought a car the first time we came, and just like left it with a friend in Rotorua. So we had ground transportation, and this time we obviously didn't. So we were just like, hop back on the plane, fly up to Rotorua, and just do everything based out of the Airbnb, ride to all the trails, walk to the grocery store, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was
We've had a couple of people be like, oh, the ferry's amazing, you see dolphins, and I'm like, all I saw was like the bag I was vomiting into the last time we did it. So,
I'll be honest, I've been on the ferry a number of times, and I don't think I've ever seen dolphins off it. I know people definitely do, but I haven't seen any yet. So, no, I mean the logistics of New Zealand. I mean, people look at it and they go, "Oh, it's so small," but then it just takes you hours to drive anywhere. So, if I can get on a plane, I'm right on board with you guys there. If I'd rather be there in a couple of hours if I don't need to drive there.
Exactly.
So, what brought you for the Volcanic? I mean, obviously, I've seen you guys kind of look like you just live an epic adventure all the time of chasing races. Is this something that's been on the radar for a while?
We had heard about it last year, I think, possibly the year before. And then the Enduro events crew actually reached out and invited us, which
Oh,
was
nice.
really cool because, we always, it obviously makes it easier to do an event when we get invited by the promoter and they help take care of some of the logistics and some of the costs associated with the event. But it was one that we had heard of and been like, ooh, this is like, cool looking stage race in one of our favorite places in the world. And then when they invited us, we were like, well, obviously we're going.
Yeah.
This sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's super cool. So first experience of it, but you said you'd been to Rotorua before, but it sounds like in a different time of enduro bikes and riding a bit differently. So
Totally. Yeah. So
how did
we
Rotorua stack
raced.
up to your memories?
Yeah, we raced the EWS in 2015 and 2017 in
Ah, so
Rotorua.
did I.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. We got absolutely slaughtered by the mud situation, which you probably remember.
Yeah, that was
Because
terrible.
we live in the desert, so when it was, dry for practice and then like torrential downpour to mud in routes was not a good time. It was really funny packing for this trip. We brought like all the mud tires, and everyone was like, "There's no mud in Rotorua." I'm like, "Excuse me." The last two times we were there, we were absolutely destroyed by the mud, but there was no mud this time around. Can report. Very different experience. But yeah, I mean, we just have always loved the riding here. It's very special.
Once again, having the smaller bikes, sort of similar to Nelson, like we touched on the occasional of the harder trails up here, but A, knowing that we wanted to see some of the trails that we were going to be racing, and B, just not having the big bikes with us, we kind of stayed to the blue, dark blue, occasional black.
Well, and I like used an entire set of brake pads in Nelson,
Yeah.
so we couldn't do that again before the
Yeah.
race.
That too.
I mean, the XC riding here is really fantastic. Like, you can link together such a big day and like do so many trails, and like, yeah, it's just really fun on a
Yeah,
little bit for sure.
definitely. I mean, even for me, like, I mean, my background is downhill racing and gravity racing and that. And anytime I go to Rotorua now, I'll take my Santa Cruz Blur 120mm travel bike because it's just so much fun there. It's
Yeah.
just I think that's actually a great amount of travel for that forest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really wild. We were looking at some of our footage because we didn't really film things in 2014, 15, but like, we had action cameras, so we'd bust them out
We did a
occasionally.
little bit in 17. I think we had
Yeah, a little more in 17. But we were looking at footage from 2014, I think it was, and had footage of Be Rude Not To, the trail. And now we rode it this time, and it's just wild because when we'd ridden it 11 years ago, it had just been clear cut. And so it was just like no trees, totally like gray and exposed. And this time there's like 30, 40-foot trees on both sides, and like it looks like it's been there forever. And it was so wild because, every time we've visited Rotorua, the forest has been a little different. They've done some clear cutting or they've replanted or whatever. And so to see such a like obvious difference of that trail in 2 different years was just so wild. It was a
trees
neat.
grow really fast here.
Yeah.
That was our takeaway.
I think that's actually kind of one of the special things about that forest in Rotorua because it's kind of ever evolving. You don't get trails that, I mean, some of the trails have been there for a long time now, but you've got sections of forest that, yeah, they get cut, trails get rebuilt. And so you've kind of just always got something evolving throughout the whole place, which is quite cool.
Yeah, it's something that we have not really experienced in the US, although we have in certain other countries. Rotorua, I think. I was trying to remember if we anyway, working forests where like you're allowed to be in the forest and they work with the trail association or trail builders to like put trails in. And then, everybody knows that eventually this is going to get cut down and the trail might get destroyed, and that's okay. They get to rebuild it afterwards. It's a really neat relationship because you get access to these incredible forests and the ability to make a lot of really neat trails and something.
And it's neat to see kind of how the trails evolve through that process too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think Rotorua has they've got a very special relationship between everyone there to make that work. And it's very impressive that what they get done there. So how did the Volcanic Epic go for you guys? Five days, right?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was definitely hard. It was shorter stages than some stage races we've done, but really that just meant you go harder. Like I was so pinned every single day, racing with Priscilla Thompson, she's an amazing athlete. She definitely kind of had my number on the climbs, but we were close enough that it was fun. And yeah, I mean, it's just, you can go so hard in Rotorua too, because like the climbs are like, I want to say the climbing trails are kind of easy, but that also means that like the pace stays really high and it's just really relentless, and like you're trying to like not let any gaps form, and like it's cool racing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I know exactly what you mean, because yeah, especially when you get into those bunches on the climbs and it's just everyone's just hammering and you're just max heart rate, and because like a lot of the climbs aren't super long either, so you kind of know like, right, I can just push and push and push and push and then try and recover.
Totally.
I also had a good race. Well, Syd forgot to mention, but she ended up second overall for the women.
Nice. Very good.
Yep. Yeah. I ended up third overall in the guys, which I'm very pleased with. Definitely could not keep up with Sam Fox and Connor Johnston. Those guys are riding so strong. It was so cool to see. And I ended up kind of more with a couple of 40 plus guys who, the three of us ended up riding together, and then Sam and Connor were kind of off the front doing their own thing. But it was really fun. I mean, it was inspiring to see how fast those guys were riding, and fun to have some guys that I was riding with so that we were kind of pushing each other the whole time, and just really, really great racing. And like Syd said, these trails are so much fun and hard to race fast because you can go so fast all the time.
Yeah. And so did you guys didn't race in the pairs? You guys just raced individually?
Yeah, we decided to do solos. We raced as a duo in 2019 at BCBR and really enjoyed it. It was a super cool experience, but I think, both of us kind of like being able to like push ourselves and be able to race against other people, solos in our category.
Yeah, and I don't like being pushed, so
like physically
pushed, which is definitely like a thing in the duos racing, and I think it's cool that like people, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
It's allowed.
I've only just learned
totally a thing. Yeah.
I've only just learned this is a thing recently where people actually physically push the other person up the hill when they need to. I was quite astounded when I found that out.
Yeah. So when we did BCBR, I was like, you can't push me, don't touch me. But then like, again, this is sort of, we were transitioning from enduro to cross country. So we were on kind of bigger bikes and we were definitely stronger on the descents. And like, there were a couple times for sure that there'd be like people catching up to us that we knew we were going to have to get around on the descents. And Macky would be like, can I please push you off the hill?
Just for like 30 seconds, just so we can get to the single track first.
Yeah. But I think, solo, I don't know, we like to just race.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
If he races with me, he's basically just like my domestique for like the entire time because he's so much faster. So
like, we got pretty good at like, I'd be like, what do you want from the aid station? And she'd be like, how about a banana and a watermelon? I'd like go up to the aid station and like have them, and like as she came by, hand it up, and then like catch up and hand her the next thing. And it was a cool dynamic.
It's fun, but like it's not that fun for you. You would like rather duke it out with the guys, and I get that for sure.
Yeah.
And I also like get competitive with the other women, but it's like not fair if he's like feeding me, so it's not really the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the favorite day? Was there a specific day that was one that stands out?
I mean, I got a stage win on the 4th day in Taupo, which I think
nice.
Was a little bit played more to my strengths just because it was a little bit more of a power stage. It was shorter climbs, a lot of twisty, turny stuff. Everyone was like, it's so dry and loose. And we were like, come to New Mexico.
Yeah.
This is hard.
This is nothing.
So that was fun. I think I think the best descent was probably day 3, the Okatana walkway, which was a really cool descent. I think it's not one that gets ridden as much. It definitely had kind of this like backcountry native bush feel, and you could just go so fast. So that was a ton of fun. The climb to get up there was pretty heinous. But
yeah, the climb was brutal, but that descent was just, there were good sight lines, really, really fast, some nice berms that you could just like use to hit the corners really fast. It was incredible.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've heard of that, but I've never been out there. It's the typical thing. You go to Rotorua and you spend your whole time in the core of the forest because it's just trails.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Yeah. If you do ever ride the walkway, start on the closer to Rotorua side and go out to the top and back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Don't start on the other side and go up the climb. It's not worth it.
Kind of just cruel.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a fun and definitely like an XC descent, but also you can get going really fast and like there's a good natural flow to the trail, I think, especially at race speed. So that's cool.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. That sounds like it was a good week. I was hoping to get there, but yeah, unfortunately, life was busy and I couldn't make it, but hopefully next year. So when you're preparing for something like this, I mean, you guys clearly, you spend a lot of time on your bikes. I guess this is your job at this point, but like, were you really building up at home coming into this? Was this like a real focus point of training, or are you guys just kind of riding a lot, so you're generally pretty fit and strong, or how do you kind of prepare in that instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of like a little bit of both. Like we're really just preparing for our whole season, which this was kind of the start of that. So I'm not sure we necessarily did anything that was like specific to this race other than ride some pretty high volume weeks. I mean, it depends who you ask. Some people are like, it's only high volume if you're doing 35 hours. Yeah. But for us, like trying to consistently get in that sort of 15 to 20 hour week with some strength training and a little bit of cross training sometimes, like that's kind of a sweet spot to be prepared for an event like this for sure, and to not be like totally burnt out by spending hours and hours on the trainer.
Yeah,
I think it also gave us a early season race to be excited about, to kind of go out and do the training when it was cold and snowing and you didn't really want to. You're like, no, but we've got Volcanic Epic, and if we don't go out now, we're going to be miserable when we get there because we won't go as fast as we want, or whatever. So I think having an event that you're looking forward to, that you're preparing for, at least for me, really motivates me to actually put in the training that I need to do.
Yeah, and definitely. We had a extremely mild winter this year in New Mexico, so that I think we came into it maybe a little more prepared than we might have otherwise. We just got to ride mountain bikes a lot more than we usually would, which helps because when you ride road all winter and then get on a mountain bike, like your arms hurt, your back hurts, your hands hurt, like everything kind of sucks. So I think we came in, and then also obviously spending a couple weeks in Nelson and like getting to ride proper trails like helped.
Yeah, if your arms were going to hurt, they were going to hurt with the descents here.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's next on the cards for you guys after this? What's your kind of season look like going out from here? Yeah,
so we fly home tomorrow. We have about a week at home, and then we go to Sea Otter. It's the big the industry event in Monterey.
I'll say a big one every year.
Yeah.
We've avoided it since
recently, 2019, but we used to go every single year. Yeah. Now we're actually not even going to race this year. It's just it is kind of a good time to catch up with sponsors and see people, and we'll do some meet and greet events and that kind of thing. The racing is, I don't know, hot take. The racing at Sea Otter is kind of terrible.
Yep. I've raced downhill there. It is not a good downhill race.
Yeah.
And it's the big race is now the gravel race, and gravel's not really our thing, so I think it's just easier to just go without bikes.
Yeah.
My bike also got stolen at Sea Otter once, so I'm like, if I don't have to worry about my bike, that would be great. And then from there, it is kind of into the meat of the race season for us with the Whiskey off-road, Grand Junction off-road.
Yeah, we're basically doing similar to what we did last year, which is a number of sort of 40, 50 mile marathon type events, some stage racing, other stage races. Later in the season, we'll be doing Breck Epic. And then we're going to be in Europe. I'm going to race Mega Avalanche again this year, which I'm very excited about. Syd's doing a stage race in Italy right before that. So we're going to both go over. And then finishing off the season, I'm racing Trans BC Enduro, and then flying to Marquette, Michigan to support Syd at the Margie Gessick 100 again. So we're doing a couple more events where like one of us is racing and the other one's supporting, but overall kind of similar in that a little bit more endurance focused, but a number of, other events, and especially for me, some enduro and, Mega Avalanche, mass start downhill stuff.
Yeah. It's going back to some of your roots by the sounds of it, some enduro stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've just really enjoyed I enjoy the mass start aspect. And since enduro is individual start, I'm like, yeah, that's fun, but it's really fun when you get to race against people. And so that's where Mega Avalanche kind of is best of both worlds in my book, where you're racing downhill, but you're also racing against people. And then for Trans BC Enduro, I like the kind of enduro stage races because everybody's racing blind, and you're racing in a different way than you do when you race a traditional enduro where you got to practice for 2 days and you know all the tracks. When you're racing them blind and you're kind of going, all right, I need to balance going fast with not smashing into a tree because I've never been down the trail. I think that's a really fun way to race and is kind of a true test of your bike handling abilities, because it's not how well can I memorize it, it's how well can I ride a bike on whatever shows up in front of me.
Yeah, I agree. It's some of the most fun. Not that I've done a lot of it, but I find it really fun. Just that whole trying to ride off your intuition of what you think is coming and that sort of thing, which is quite cool.
Yeah,
and I think that's a little bit of why I lost the love for enduro racing as well, is because it just became this. It's always competitive, right? But it's just, like you say, people would spend days and days, and you'd go to a race and you've got like 50 locals who know the trails like the back of their hand, and you just get absolutely destroyed because you show up and do one practice run. So it'd be cool to do some more of that sort of completely blind racing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like enduro really, really changed in a way that made us less into it. I would say kind of between that sort of 2017 onward period. At least in the US, a lot of them became kind of bike park enduros. So there was really no pedaling transitions, or they'd like throw in a like pedal up under the chairlift just to like make it feel like an enduro. But then you're riding like bike park trails and then it's like not only the local advantage, but also the fact that people can do like 12 laps on these trails and they get blown out, and it just, I don't know, it stopped being fun for me, at least.
And the early ones, I felt like it was about like big backcountry days and backcountry stages, and like you were out in the mountains for 6 hours, 8 hours doing these like ridiculous descents that people had maybe ridden like once before. If they were
like even if you
local,
live there, you have to pedal 3,000 feet, 1,000 meters to get up there. Like that definitely makes it a little bit fairer, I guess.
Well, and it was just fun because they weren't as destroyed, and they didn't have the braking bumps and everything. These were kind of trails that people didn't see regularly, and it was just fun to go out there and be like, cool, we're out in the middle of nowhere and we're racing our bikes, and as opposed to like, cool, we're racing our bikes at a bike
the
park.
Like 100th bike park flow trail on an enduro race where you're like overshooting every little jump. I was like, nope, I'm done. This is not how I want to die.
No, I can completely agree with you guys on that. I actually want to jump back in time a bit and find out where riding started for you. Were you both mountain bikers? Did someone bring someone into it? How did that sort of all happen for you guys?
Yeah, so my parents actually rode mountain bikes very early, like in the 80s on like rigid bikes in the woods.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up with it. Not quite the way that kids grow up with it
Yeah.
these days. Like there were no Strider bikes,
Yeah.
There's no high
there
school
was no
mountain
high school mountain
biking.
biking like we have now in the States, but I definitely was surrounded by it, had mountain bikes as a kid. I grew up in Ohio, which is in the Midwest in the US. So not really like a hotbed of mountain biking, but actually quite a bit of trails. I did my first race, I think, when I was like 13 or so, and I dropped my chain. It got jammed all up in there. And then my mom caught me and she fixed my chain, and then I sprinted her to the finish, and she hasn't forgiven me yet for that. But I won the sprint for the record.
Nice. That's the
So
important part.
so I definitely have been doing this for a long time. I didn't really start competing until I got into college. I was a runner before that. I hurt myself like runners do.
Mhm.
And then we have a pretty fun collegiate series in the US. So I'm losing my voice here a little bit, but that's where Macky and I met, was racing in college. So we could travel around and do that. So
Mine was a little different in that I grew up in New Orleans, and the biggest hill in New Orleans is at the zoo, and it's like 10 meters tall. So there's not a lot of
I
mountain
was gonna
biking.
say, I can't imagine there's a lot of elevation in New Orleans.
No. But in the summers, we'd come out to New Mexico because my mom's family had a little cabin. And so I had a mountain bike, at some point, probably mid 90s, something like that. And then we actually moved to New Mexico in 2000. And at that point, my parents enrolled me in an after school mountain bike program. And so I kind of got introduced to it at that point, and then did my first race at 15, I think, and got second in the junior beginner class and was like, this is so fun. And then like went to do another race. And since I did well in the junior beginner, I was like, well, I should move up a category. And the next category up was junior expert. So for my first race, I did like a 6 mile race. And for my next race, I did a 30-mile race. And I almost died and ran out of water and, all this stuff. And the people who did the after school program and brought me to the race were like, we knew either you would never touch a bike again or you would be into it. And, I was into it. And so started racing a little bit more each year and raced through college and, did the collegiate racing thing, which was really fun. And then after college, kind of said, what would it look like if I didn't get a normal job and just, made no money and raced my bicycle a bunch. And Syd was down once she graduated. And so that's kind of how we started doing it.
yeah, and
That's
Macky
amazing.
was originally racing cross country and
Yeah.
racing very well at pretty high level in the US. And then I think it was like 2013 was kind of when the rise of enduro was happening, and he had
Yeah.
always been a really strong descender on the XC circuit. So, and like raced Super D when that was a thing. I don't know if that was a
Ah,
thing in New Zealand.
we had a brief stint of Super D here.
Yeah.
I was the Pennsylvania State Super D champion at one point,
Nice.
2009. So that's
Okay.
an accolade that I'll take to the
Yeah.
grave with me. But
That's awesome.
I actually did really find Super D a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
I kind of wish
once
I would
again,
kind of wish
that's
some
part
form of that would
downhill.
come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he kind of was like, all right, there's this enduro thing, and I didn't know anything, so I was like, sure, I'm pretty good at going downhill, like, sign me up for some enduros. Spoiler alert, I was not good at going downhill. So there was a long evolution there of getting absolutely pummeled in every race that I did, but we had a lot of fun along the way.
And we, I think it was useful because it forced me to unlearn some bad habits and relearn some good habits in terms of cornering and braking and descending and body position and like all that stuff, which is cool because once you learn that, it doesn't matter what bike you're riding, all the same things apply. And so we learned it to race enduro, and now no matter what we want to race, we have that skill set that we can apply. And so then in like 2019, when we were like, maybe we want to do more than just enduro, when we started training for, cross country fitness, we were able to take the descending skill set and incorporate that with some fitness, and now can kind of show up to whatever sort of race looks fun and have a good time and enjoy it.
That's awesome. So when did at what point did the YouTube channel start? And was that ever a thought as part of your master plan of that you don't want to get a regular job that you were going to start that, or was that just something just to document the trip along the way?
I mean, I think it was kind of a master plan might be going too far.
Yeah.
Planning has not really always been our strong suit, but I do think we were kind of at a point, like we had some sponsorship in that period from like 2014 to 17, but I mean, trying to make a living as a sponsored athlete is not really viable. There's a pretty hard cap on that unless you're winning World Cups, and probably even then, unless you're really a goat. So we were kind of like, I think we went into it with like, oh, how could we be more valuable to sponsors, assuming we're not going to be winning EWS races?
Yeah.
And what actually happened was we were able to kind of create a completely different income stream, totally separate from sponsorship, which has also now looped around to make us more valuable to sponsors in the long run.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny that is how that happened. But
I think there were some signs so this was 2017 is when we started the channel. 2018 is when we actually started doing it regularly. Like 2017, I think we did
we were
5
like,
videos
here's
or
some
something.
POV from a race,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
here's this like installing a tire.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
it was really all over the place.
But up to that point, I had done a certain amount of YouTube videos on my personal YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny to go, like, we'll occasionally happen upon one or, find one, and the signs were there. We were like doing like kind of short vlogs, and like there were some funny moments. And I look back and I'm like,
Most of it was terrible.
most of it was
but-
terrible, but we had moments of brilliance. But because of that, we kind of have some footage from back in the day that we occasionally can access or use or whatever, and it's sort of fun to see. Oh, there were kind of some signs of that way back, and now there's more signs, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting the way you said it before, Sid, about how you started it as like an income stream, or to help that income stream, and then realize how much value it actually adds to you. It's funny how little people realize. I mean, especially the younger generation now. I feel like they're almost turning their nose up at social media because it's almost become like not cool to be doing. But yeah, the amount of them now, and you're sort of like, you need to be doing something, because if you're not winning races, it's a pretty tough game out there.
Yeah.
And even if you are, like, there's always going to be someone younger and faster. Like, you might be the best.
But for how long?
Yeah, I mean, like, most people, it's like, cool, you're the best for 2 years. Like,
It's a short
occasionally you'll
window.
see somebody who is able to have some career longevity, but like, man, that's not very much time. And like, what do you want to do after that? Like, do you have a plan after that? Or, how do you want to spend your time after that? And for us, it's like, we want to race bikes and keep training and push ourselves. And so how can we make that happen, given that we are not winning, and nor are we going to be winning on the international stage? Like, that's the reality of it. So how can we provide value both to the people who, watch our videos and stuff, as well as to our sponsors? And
yeah, and I think the big shift for us, kind of like when we were sponsored athletes, it was always, this was sort of the prime Instagram era, I feel like, of like, oh, you like post your cool riding picture, like artsy riding shots, and like all the other like basically the other pro racers that you're friends with like your photo, right? And
yeah.
I think the shift for us was when we started doing some YouTube videos that were like, we were suddenly reaching people who were not other pro racers, who were just like had got on the internet one day and wanted to like find out about mountain bike racing. And we were getting these questions that were totally like off the wall of like, will there be porta potties at the start? Like these sort of things that like, we had never thought about because like, yeah,
We've been doing it for so long, it's obvious. Of course there's going to be porta potties. But
we're like,
Yeah.
why don't you have a tube in your tire? Like that kind of stuff. We're like, okay, there's this whole world of people out there that are not in this little bike racing bubble. And I think that would be like my advice to any up and coming racers. And it's not necessarily like, it doesn't have to be social media, it doesn't have to be YouTube, but like get out of the bubble somehow, because like you are not selling bike parts to other pro racers or other young kids trying to become pro racers. Like that is not what moves the needle for any brands. Like there is a whole world of people out there who know nothing about bike racing, but like might be intrigued about it if you can figure out a way to like share your story. So
Yeah,
that's my pitch.
definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, I've tried doing the YouTube stuff as well, and I was a bit like when you're talking about at the start, doing point of views from races and things like that. And I realized that video editing wasn't my thing. So I started a podcast and here I am.
Brilliant. That was an excellent decision.
Sometimes I wish we had done that.
Same,
like 20
seriously.
hours editing a video.
I know that was actually one of the questions I had for you guys is who, as one of you the video editor, is it a team effort? How does that work when you're, because you guys must have hours of footage to go through.
Yes.
Well, we have 424 gigabytes from this race, so yes. Yeah.
Gives me anxiety just thinking about that.
Yeah. So we both edit. When we started the channel, it was just Macky. I had like no idea. And I was also like, I don't want to do YouTube. Like, this sucks. Like,
early videos.
I was like totally checked out. We have clips of me from like 2017 being like, I don't think anyone's interested in our lives. Like, why are we doing this? Anyway, I haven't figured out how to like throw that into a video somewhere because it's pretty funny. But I had a pretty major injury in the end of 2019 and was off the bike for like a year and a half. So I had more time on my hands. So I learned to edit in that period, which was good because we've really sort of upped our production value since then. So now it definitely takes both of us. We also have Macky's brother working for us, and he typically does like our rough cuts. So he's going to get all 450 gigabytes. Sorry, Bo. And he'll sort of like basically like watch through and cut it down to like we kind of have some rules for the POV footage. It's like, is something happening? Like, are we passing someone? Are we talking to someone? Are we talking about something? Like, if not, cut it. Like, occasionally there will be something so epic or beautiful that it stays in as raw POV, but like that's pretty rare these days. So it helps to have him cut it down. Then I spend a long time sort of kind of building out the like storyline, voiceovers, that kind of stuff. And then Macky does all our like detail edits and graphics and that kind of stuff. So
we've sort of figured out the process that works for us, and it's definitely a joint effort. I would say we usually spend somewhere in the 20-hour range editing hours combined.
It depends on the video.
It
like
does depend.
Some are quick, like if it's like one ride or like one, like occasionally there'll be a quick one. Sometimes they take way longer than that. So it depends.
It's funny because it kind of comes back around to, as we're talking about that sponsorship and value and things like that. And I think often people probably just look at you guys and go, man, look at this, it's amazing. They just go and they ride these locations and they make these videos, but the hours that are going on in the background of editing these videos and even the thought process of what are we going to, how are we going to tell this story? How is this going to be interesting? Like there's a lot that goes on in there, like nothing in this world comes for free. And even though it looks glamorous and, you know, you're getting lots of YouTube views, I'm sure there is like you say, a ton of hours going into it.
I mean, it is basically a full-time job, and we're really lucky to be at a point that we can both be compensated to the point that it is our full-time job. I think doing a YouTube channel as a side hustle is hard, like extremely hard. And we were lucky that we had sponsorship when we went into this admittedly, like not a lot. Like this is not a get rich quick scheme.
No,
Like
no.
if you want to get rich, don't become a professional bike racer.
No.
But there are pathways to like allow you to like do it as a job. But like it is a job. It's a very good one. We have a lot of schedule flexibility. We can be like, let's go to New Zealand for a month. Like we could do this here, you know, whatever. But like it is a job at the end of the day.
And the other part is for us, compared to some of our friends who also do YouTube or content creation, our focus is racing and training. And, you know, as a racer yourself, like you understand what that entails. And so it's sort of figuring out the balance of like, how do we make sure we're getting the training in and the recovery for that while also, you know, doing the editing and creating the content and that kind of stuff. So that's something that's been a big focus of ours recently, is figuring out that, I would say, work-life balance, but actually it's work-work balance.
Yeah. Or life
or life balance. Yeah, depending. But figuring out how to do that and like make it sustainable so that we are able to do the training that we want to do and hopefully get the results that we want while still creating the content to the level that we have come to expect from ourselves.
Yeah. And I think honestly that's helped our YouTube channel. I think people who kind of go into it with the idea of like, I'm going to make a YouTube channel about mountain biking, like they kind of run out of ideas or inspiration, or they're just doing things that have been done a bunch of times before. Like we're kind of like, we want to race and like we will tell stories about the racing that we do, however that pans out, good, bad, ugly, fun. That's what you get. And I think that's kind of helped our channel longevity, because it's like, it's about us and we're doing things that, and if you find it interesting, you can subscribe and hang around. And if you don't, that's okay. Versus like trying to do clickbaity things or trying to like, I don't know, get hundreds of thousands of views on every video. Like we don't need that.
Yeah. Now, you don't have to give any sort of specifics, but I'm curious to know, like, what's the revenue or like what's the income like from YouTube for you guys? I mean, whether you said it's 50-50, you know, kind of your income compared to, you know, your other streams or whatever, like, is it still lucrative? Because I mean, obviously YouTube is massively saturated in whatever genre you want to look at, but like, is there still like enough that makes it worthwhile?
So we started off with the goal of not relying on YouTube AdSense as income.
Yeah.
So like we started and we were like,
this is all bonus.
Yeah, anything we make from YouTube is going to be bonus. That's
okay.
great. And so we started off and we very quickly started a Patreon, which I don't know if you're familiar with Patreon.
Yeah.
Basically, okay. Yeah, so people can pay a certain amount per month to support what we're doing, to sort of help us keep making videos. And we started that pretty early and basically said, like, you know, this is a way that you can help support the channel, help make this possible.
I think we started it because everyone was screaming at us to get a gimbal, because this was back before good stabilization. And we were like, look, we can't afford a gimbal, but like if we can get to this amount on Patreon, like we'll buy a gimbal. We bought one. Macky broke it on like the first ride by smacking it on his stem. So like that didn't really pan out, but like it kind of started as this like, okay, like help us increase our production value because we are broke bike racers.
Yeah.
And now that is a pretty significant chunk of our income. I think it's less than YouTube, or it's more than YouTube AdSense.
Yeah, so Patreon, YouTube AdSense is now enough that we
do count it.
We use a prediction of it for our budget for the year. So it actually is a significant amount now, which is great.
Oh, let's go.
Patreon is still more than
Yeah.
YouTube AdSense. And then sponsorship is fairly similar to Patreon, I think, like combined support from our sponsors. And then we do a certain number of sponsored videos. And we kind of think of those as different. Like sponsorship is the more traditional bike industry sponsorship. And then sponsored videos are ones that like will agree to X number of sponsored videos for the year, and we kind of get paid per video. So those are sort of the main sources of income.
And that has allowed us to work with sponsors outside of like the traditional bike industry model, just because that is what most companies are doing now. Like we work with Schulz headphones, a fantastic product. They're great. They're great to work with.
Love riding
but
in them.
They're not gonna like just sponsor someone for a whole year to like do whatever, like it's like we're doing this number of videos, like the integrations will be this long, like we will coordinate it with your sale and that they're having, so it's a little bit more professional than the bike industry in some ways.
There's generally more money coming from outside of the bike industry as well, so it's not a bad place to be looking.
Yeah.
But let's and I think like the Patreon thing, obviously what you guys have built, like you've built a community, like you've built a community of people who are super invested in what you do. They're obviously very interested in following along with the racing, and I mean, you're probably inspiring a lot of people to show up to go to races and things like that as well, whether you really think about it or not. But it's and then obviously that Patreon thing kind of comes hand in hand with it, because then they feel like they're a little part of it too, which is cool. So I think it's, again, like it's more than just putting some videos up on YouTube. Like you can't really just do that these days. It's kind of like just being a bike racer. You can't just be a YouTuber.
Yeah, it's true. And I do think the community piece is very important. Like if you want to make a living on the internet in any way, shape, or form, because I think that's kind of the value added. Like we're just two people making videos, but like what we have created on Patreon is like the people who interact with each other. And like we do a camp every year where we like basically open invite to anyone on Patreon to like come ride with us for 3 days. And like people end up being like, they meet other people that they become really close friends with, and we'll get photos of like, hey, we're meeting up like here and doing this ride. And it's like, it's not like we facilitated that, but it's not about us in some ways. Yeah.
No, that's cool. I used to work with a guy who was marketing manager at, current job I'm in, and he would always talk about, we just have to build community. That was his like ethos. We're just going to build community. And that's, I mean, I really see it now, obviously, like with the podcast stuff and that as well. It's critical, I think, to really make it work.
And I think that's what we're all looking for as humans. And we live kind of in a crazy time where not everybody has that in their real life. And so I kind of feel like if we can provide that for someone via the internet, like that brings a lot of meaning to what we do. We're like, how can we make mountain biking like a little bit more accessible to someone who didn't grow up with it, didn't grow up hitting dirt jumps, like doesn't know a derailleur from a cassette, like how can we kind of open this space a little bit and be like, this is a totally silly sport, but it's a lot of fun. And like, I don't know, there's a lot to be gained here.
And I think mountain biking can be so exclusive feeling, cycling in general. There's sort of,
it's expensive.
It's expensive. Yeah. And but not even talking about that, just like there can be this kind of like, are you part of the cool kids thing? And we're like, we want everybody to ride mountain bikes. Like we don't just want, like, come on in. You don't know anything about it. That's fine. Like we'll teach you. Like it's, it's good people who do this. And that's really what I felt this weekend at Volcanic Epic at the race, is like the people who were there, they were excited to be there. They were nice people. Like everybody was friendly. We never like, I don't usually where I am in the pack, but like I never had any issues with passing. Nobody was rude. Everybody like,
I didn't have issues with passing, which
and Syd
is slightly
sometimes,
more unusual. Everyone was incredibly nice. I mean, I think that's partially just like you Kiwis are very nice people. Like, people are so nice here. But I also think like mountain bikers are a good crew for the most part.
Yeah.
There's some of the friends and I, we used to laugh. We're like, imagine if mountain biking was like surfing, where, you know, like if someone got in your way and you just absolutely took them out off the trail or something, you know, and like cut their tire. Because you're like, surfing can be crazy in some places. You're like, imagine if mountain biking was like that. But for the most part, you know, if you see someone with a flat tire, you don't know them, you'll stop and offer you help. Like, you'll give them your spare tube if you've got one. So it's a pretty cool sport.
It really is. And I think, you know, the more people, what we try to help people realize, or other people trying to make a living in mountain biking, is the more people in mountain biking, the better it is for everybody. That means more trails. That means more
100%.
product development. Yeah, it means better bikes. It means better equipment. Like, there's nothing bad about more people riding bikes.
No.
So let's bring more people in.
Absolutely. Well, hey, this has been fantastic. I told you I'd keep you guys about 30 or 40 minutes, and we're close to an hour, so I really appreciate it. And it's been super fascinating for me just getting to talk to you guys, especially about the YouTube side of things, a side that, like I said, I steered clear of. But, you know, we do have a YouTube channel in case anyone does want to go and watch this. But, hey, it's been awesome, and I think what you guys are doing is really cool as well, because being a person who loves mountain bike racing, it's awesome to see that you guys are really, you know, while you're basing a lot of your stuff with your YouTube, you know, it's all focused on what you actually want to do, which is going and racing bikes. So I think that's super cool.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having us on. Really, really appreciate it.
No, it's been fantastic. Before we go, actually, I've got a couple of quick questions for you. You guys are sponsored by Maxxis, as is the podcast. What is your go-to Maxxis tire?
Aspens. Or Team Aspen over here.
For cross-country racing, Like this weekend or this week, Syd rode double Aspens. I did Aspen on the front, Aspen ST on the rear. So hashtag Team Aspen.
Yeah, right there with you. I love the Aspen on the XC bike. It's so fast. And then, have you been riding the new 34 SL from Fox? Is that what you've been running on your bikes here?
Yeah,
we have.
Yeah.
Nice. How have you been finding that? Like, obviously, just brand new out. It's probably only had a month or so on them, I guess.
Yeah, we got them like the week before we came to New Zealand.
Right, there you go.
They're fantastic, and I am kind of a dummy when it comes to suspension. Like, I can't usually tell the difference. You know, I'm very spoiled for one, but I usually, like, you know, when I got the Podium step cast, I was like, it feels good. This one, I was like, oh, this feels real good. Like, this is
nice.
Like, you can charge with this thing.
Yeah. We're running them at the 130 mil because the kind of races that we like to do are more single track heavy, maybe a little bit more technical than some other races. And so we're like, an extra 10 mil of suspension that like weighs the same as the 120 mil version. Like, of course we're going to do that. And it was just amazing for this week.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, shout out to our mutual friend Sean Estes at Fox. I'll wait for mine in the mail, Sean. So don't worry about it. But again, thank you guys so much for joining. It's been a super fun episode, and I'm looking forward to following along now and seeing what adventures you come up with for the rest of the year and beyond.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.